how long did it take you to finish your first project? And what's the name of your first project, as far as your book?
My first book was Imagination Overload, and that was...
That's a dope title.
Thank you.
That's basically me.
So that's what's on the... like, it's everywhere.
For real.
But that logo is on my very first book. It doesn't say LadyVee Event Production. This is just like the picture that's on my first book, Imagination Overload. And it took me probably about close to 6 months to put that together, because it's a combination of my poetry written on the back of napkins and written on the back of, the old envelopes. And then I had to go around my whole house and pull together my college notebooks of the poems I was writing when I was too bored sitting up in the teacher's classroom. I was like, I'm just write a poem. I'm not listening to you. But it's like it took me like close to 6 months to put that book together, because I had to, put it in the categories of life, love, heartache, art, and observations and reflections. That's kind of like the structure of all my books. I like put them into categories like that. But my poetry was all over my house, and all the shoe boxes and in the closet, and in the bed, just everywhere. And I had to put it together in like an organized fashion, and that's how Imagination Overload came out in about 5 or 6 months after I got everything together finally to make it an organized book.
How did you come up with that title? And where were you at when you came up with that title? Because when you get that title and you like, that's it.
That's the marketing side of me. I'm just like, I kind of set myself in a quiet space or whatever. I'm just like, well, what is the feeling of this book? It's like, for me, I'll just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed with all this imagination. It's just overloading into this book. So okay, there you go.
That's that title right there. If you ain't had that title already, that's my title. My next
no,
book.
Like, don't steal that.
No. I'm ready to put a different I on there or something. Mm-hmm. put a number 1 instead of I.
Exactly.
I wouldn't do that.
I mean, that ink blots on I-20. It's just like I found myself going up and down Highway I-20, and that's where I come up with my inspiration. I couldn't write it down because I'm driving. I'm like, ink blots on I-20. That's perfect, because my poetry is coming out while I'm driving to Augusta and back to Atlanta.
How long did it take you to write the second book?
The second book was a little bit quicker, because it's kind of like the poems that didn't make the first book, I revised them and they made the second book. It's just like I had so much poetry. I would like to keep it like limited to like 50 poems a book, because I don't want you to be like, oh man, this is a 1,000-page book.
Another one.
But just like, some of I try to make a journey through my books, and if you don't make the first journey, then let's make a second one with the second book. It's just like I don't like to just cram all these poems in here and just read them and they're all over the place. Yeah. It's a content, it's a purpose for them.
It's a flow.
Right.
It's hard to take poems out of your book. You're like, damn, it's so hard. I don't want to put. You can't put everything in it.
Poems in one book. It's like, no, you have to make sure that when people are reading it, they're not like, okay, well, why did they go over here and why are they here now? It's like, what's the content flow of it all?
Let me ask you this. Can you break down to people who's in the process of trying to do a book, break down what it takes to write a book?
To write a poetry collection, or to write any kind of book?
Well, to write a poetry collection.
To write a poetry collection, I would say that you need to have a variety of work. I mean, I've read some people's stuff and it's just like the same theme the whole time. And it's like, well, if it's a love book, I get it. But it's just like, it's a lot more interesting to me if you can take me from one place to another, like take me through your journey. So have a variety of different poems. That's why, like in my book, I have life poems, love poems, heartache poems. It's not all just the same theme. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, my first tip of advice is have a variety of content. My second is to get a good book editor. Because, I mean, sometimes it's like when you're writing poetry, it's like you want to write it how you speak. But then again, it's just like, you're reading it. It's just like, if you don't have that accent or that dialect, I don't understand what your poem is.
Right. So, what is this bullshit?
Right. You may want to put like a dictionary or something in the back. Is like, if you're using words that everybody don't get, it's just like, they might miss the message of your poem just because they can't decipher what you're trying to say. So definitely, don't take the soul out of your poem when you edit it, but make sure that the period is in the right place, the comma's in the right place, or when I'm reading, I'm not like, oh gosh, let me untangle it before I can understand it. So like the first 2 great big tips is have variety, have a good book editor, and have like have an appealing, the images are really, most people don't put poems on the inside, pictures on the inside of your book, but if you do illustrate it, make sure that if it's sitting on on a bookshelf at Amazon or at the bookstore or whatever, it's appealing. You know, there's just like, man, what is this big old ink blot doing here? It's like, you know, I want to find out what's in this book or whatever, because it's kind of like, you know, what's going on here? You know, with that logo or whatever, she's got this look of, you know, yeah, I'm gonna go and get you or whatever. It's just like, you know, it's kind of like a look that you want to find out more about or whatever. So that's on my first book, is like, you know, open this book and see what I got to say or whatnot. So definitely your images have to be very appealing. Get you a graphic artist, or get you somebody that, you know, even on a CD cover, you don't want it to be looking childish. You don't want it to be looking like, you know, yeah, anybody could, you know. Right. It has to be something that grabs somebody's attention to want to purchase it or want to find out what's in this book. Right. So that's my top tips. It's like, hey, you know, if you don't grab my attention, then I'm just gonna pass you by to somebody else that gets my attention and buy their book instead.
Most definitely. I would tell, when I was doing my books, I told the person who was doing my art, I said, make the book that a person want to buy the book just because of the cover.
Right. Young, arrogant, and invincible. Yes.
That's the title. I was like,
that's the title of his book. It's just like, you know, if you saw that on the shelf, you'd be like, who is this guy think he is?
Yeah. So my second book called I Apologize.
Like, you're young, arrogant, and invincible. Now you're saying sorry. Okay.
Let me. What was your first feature? Who gave you your first feature? And where was it at? And take us how you feel, your prep, how you felt like you did. Take us through the whole process of your first feature.
I believe it was at the Black History Museum in Augusta, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it might have been some school stuff beforehand, but like oh my gosh, I got to dress up for this type of feature. Anthony Page in Augusta, he was either the event coordinator or someone of importance at the Black History Museum. And I didn't even have a book out yet. I had like pre-orders and stuff because it wasn't even out. Mm-hmm. I had like the science fair fold out thing or whatever, you know, sign the list if you want to know about my book, but I didn't even have a book. But I had the picture of the book, which is important. Like I just said, you know, I had like a printout picture and I put it up there. I'm like, this is what's coming out. And I think it was probably this picture here of LadyVeeDaPoet. And I'm just like, I want to present myself, even though I don't have a physical copy of my book. Mm-hmm. I want people to go online and try to like look it up and find out about it or whatever. So, you know, I had to be probably about like 16, 17 years old. You know, I'm sitting there in my church dress or whatever, you know, trying to, you know, make sure that my image is one of like, don't look at me as this kid, you know, putting out a book. Oh, she's so cute. I want to see if I can, you know, I want you to look at me as an author. You know, even if I'm, you know, not as old as you might not think that I know as much as you or whatever. These words are valuable, and I want to present myself so you can give me the respect that you would give somebody older than me, or somebody, you know, give me the respect that you would give any other author. You don't look at my age. Don't look at how you know, I want to present myself as like a credible person, even if I don't have a book in my hand. And I think I did a really good job because, you know, everybody there was just like, you know, I had probably about like 10 people, you know, wanting to go online and find out about the book, and other people sitting there with physical books on their table. They weren't coming by their table. And I'm just like, okay, well, you know, I think I did a good job. I couldn't even sell my book, but people want to know about it. So that was the important part.
How, you say you were 16 years old?
I had to be like 16 or 17.
When that first book came out?
It was back in Augusta.
Motherfucking prophet out there. What?
Because I mean, it was like, it had to be, because the book wasn't even out yet, but I was like promoting it online.
That's
and
dope.
So I remember it was like really young. So yeah, I mean, I give a shout out to, because of course it was probably during April National Poetry Month, because that's when, you know, everybody pays attention to poetry. Mm-hmm. And it had to be, you know, it was before I was 20, I know that. And I was just like, you know, everybody else who came up in there with their book agents and their, you know, all this credentials and stuff like that. Here I am, you know, I'm LadyVee, how you doing? But I didn't want you to look at me like some kid, you know, with this book idea or whatever, and I just want your money. I wanted them to look at me as somebody that had some clout or whatnot.
Right, so you messed my head up just now saying how old you were. Because how the hell did you know to create a logo for your picture? How did you know to print out a picture and have it prepped? How did you know that at 16?
Because, I mean, you go like on TV, and you see, you know, big time book authors, they do that. You know, you take that.
But most 16-year-olds not looking at that.
It's more like a focus type of thing. It's just like, well, hey, you know, if Michelle Obama can be a best-selling author, if, you know, Maya Angelou can put out a poetry book that the whole world reads or whatever, what is she doing? What is, you know, Nikki Giovanni doing? That, you know, she has her people that back her and everything like that. But when you're an independent artist, you are the only person doing for you.
Most definitely.
So it's just like, you know, you could have a whole vehicle behind you, you know, pushing you and doing all this type of stuff. But if you don't have that, you have to focus, okay, what is step one of getting my work out there? What is step two? And you have to do everything yourself. So, I mean, even if you're 10, there's you see those prodigies or whatever, this 10-year-old, you know, to open up a vegan restaurant or whatever. You know, it might have been his parents that did it, whatever, but he had a focus, and he's like, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to look at other successful people that have done it and follow their blueprint. It's not stealing from them. It's not, you know, I'm going to bite off your idea.
It's a template.
Whatever.
We all follow templates.
Right, and you put your personality into it, and you make sure that, you know, hey, if it worked for them, why in the world wouldn't it work for you?
Most definitely. Most definitely. Well, what are some of your writing influences?
People have told me that I kind of write like Nikki Giovanni. It's like I don't really see it, but, you know, it's just like some of my poems kind of lean towards that. It's like I always try to be real in my poetry. I've read some people where they try to, you know, infuse it with these big words, and they try to, you know, sound all smart and everything like that. At the end of the day, they're like, "What did you say?" You know, it's kind of like, you know, thank you for the
thesis,
right? But, you know, you read something, and some people get up on stage, and you're just like, you know, man, they yelled a lot. Or they, you know, they said a lot of words, but it's just like, where was your message? Where was your, you know, what am I supposed to leave out of here knowing? Was that just a rant, or was that a poem? You know, so it's kind of like with me, I want to have, you know, something that you can take away with. I want you to be like, okay, well, I see why you wrote that poem. That feeling that I got after you got off on stage is like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, I think Langston Hughes wrote like that. It's just kind of like, his poems weren't very complex, but they had emotion in them, and they had, you know, you read their poem, you read a Langston Hughes poem, and you know exactly where he was on that day. You know that he wasn't, you know, he was sitting on that crystal stair or whatever. I mean, you can see it in your mind, even though you're not using all these college words and all this, you know, stuff. It's like he takes the fluff away, and you get exactly what he's saying. So, I mean, my goal for my poetry is that, you know, I don't want you to read it like, oh yeah, that sounded intelligent. Like, no, I want you to feel what I was feeling when I wrote that poem.
And that's funny, because to me, that's the difference between Biggie and Pop. Biggie, lyrically, is better than Pop. But Pop puts so much emotion into what he's saying that it's like, ugh. And passion. He put emotion and passion into what he's saying.
I mean, you could tell that his mama was who she was. It's just like, you know, you could tell that a mama like that raised him.
How did your writing evolve over the years? Because we know you wrote your first book, like, well, if you already put it out around 16, 17, that means you probably was writing it like 14, 15.
I mean, like I said, ninth grade is like, you know, I'm not really sure exactly.
Yeah, well, ninth grade, my daughter, she's going to ninth grade, and she's 14.
Right, so, I mean, it was definitely, you know, after 13, like before 20, and that kind of range right there. But, let's see. I mean,
how do you think your writing evolved over the years?
Evolving, I would say that I got less scared because, like I said, I mean, my mama denies that she said this, but I did hear her say it. She told me that she wanted me to burn all my poetry when I die because she didn't want people to know about our family. Oh,
but you know what? You know what's that's dope about your mother in a way, but it's dope about you because your mother. If I'm wrong or I'm stepping on line, correct me. I don't want to, you know what I mean? Because that's your mom.
Yes.
Your mother is so worried about image,
yes.
But you and your sister just flourish under the pressures of having teachers as parents, have to live it up to the image or the standard that your mother had for you.
Yes. And
nobody can live up to another person's standard they had. Like, I got to live it to my standard.
Yes.
I can't live it to my wife, my kids, my mother, my father, nobody. I gotta live it to my standard, and that's one of the things that I try to embed in my kids. Like, I know I want you to do this, but you gotta live it to your standards for yourself.
Exactly.
How was you able to shake that and still flirt, huh?
I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
It's just I was gonna insert a story with like during our wedding or whatnot. It's like my mama said, okay, we're gonna pick out your white dress. We're gonna have a vanilla cake. We're gonna do because this is what your aunt wants you to have, and this is what. And I was like, well, you know, because my
your aunt's getting married, or you get married?
Because I mean, at her wedding, you know, my dad's side of the family is kind of like, you know, we are the image, and we you know, we're keeping up with the Joneses and everything like that. My mom's side is kind of, you know, laid back and not to say country, but laid back and like, you know, we're gonna go with the flow. So she's like, well, if Auntie so and so comes to the wedding and sees that you don't have these things in place, she's going to talk about us and da 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 da. I was like, let's just sit down and say that, no, I'm going to have a burgundy wedding dress. I'm going to have a chocolate cake. I'm going to, you know, this is not really me keeping up with the Joneses or whatever. Yeah. It's just like, you know, if I had my wedding and did everything that I was supposed to do, I would be miserable.
Most definitely.
So I believe my poetry has evolved with, you know, I'm not.
I supposed to finish your wedding. I was at a feature that day.
Exactly.
So
when we have our anniversary wedding, you're invited.
Okay, I'll be there, man.
But my poetry has evolved in the fact that I'm never in my life going to shame my mother. I'm never in my life going to shame my sister, and I'm not going to, you know, put their names in a poem and say my daddy did this to me and da 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 da. I'm never going to do that because it's not part of my right. It's not part of me to do that. Mm-hmm. But I am going to say what I felt about a situation. I am going to, you know, cover your name up in metaphor. I am going to, you know, present the situation. But I'm never in my whole life going to shame my family because that's not part of me to do that.
Most definitely. I understand that. I could tell based on what you're saying. Let me ask you this last question. I'll ask you this last thing about your mother. Have you ever thought about writing a poem to explain her thought process of how she see the image of because we all have images we want to keep up with, right?
Right.
But here's the thing that I've been like really digging into. I've been challenging my own thought process a lot lately, and I want to see what you think about this. The image that I'm trying to keep up with, is that still me?
Right. That was you back in the growing up days or whatnot.
Right. Is that still me? And also, was that really ever me? That's the tricky part.
I mean, that's a poem that's a novel all in itself.
I know.
But definitely...
Because you become a slave to it somewhat.
Yes. I would say that if you don't break free from, I can't say this, I can't say that. Like, Nikki Gray has that poem, like, hush, hush.
I love that poem. I love that poem.
I mean, that's Alan's favorite poem.
I love that poem. That poem
because it's just like, that's so true when it comes to a lot of black families. It's like, don't talk about this. Don't talk about it. Even though it's going on and it's horrible and it's tearing your mental up every single day, if you speak about it, then you're wrong. And so it's just like my poetry has evolved so much of I can't be so scared that I can't, you know, express myself. I mean, I see people like Teresa the Songbird, and I see people Poppy Picasso, and I see people like Queen Sheba get up there and they tell you exactly what happened. They don't mention nobody's name, but they get it off their shoulders. And there's a lot of things I'm still holding on my shoulders, and I'm just like, you know, maybe in the next book, you know, maybe after this one or whatever. But it's just like if you keep on waiting, then you carry it around with you, and that's not healthy either.
Most definitely. Have you at least wrote some of the things that's on your shoulder? Because we could write like that stuff I would never share, but I wrote about it, and it's real detailed and it's real like ugh.
I mean, you came to the writing workshops at the Cheesecake Place or whatever up in Duluth and stuff. I remember all that, but it's just like to me, it's still hard for me to even write it out. And so it's just like, you know, the first step is to write it. Second is to, am I going to get up on stage and tell a room of strangers?
Because you feel naked up there when you say something real. When you say something real, you feel naked.
Exactly.
Like,
but I mean, like you're looking at me. You're looking at me.
Most definitely.
But I believe the difference between aspiring artist, an aspiring spoken word artist, and somebody who is, you know, a veteran or whatnot, is somebody that is not afraid to get up there and just be like, this is my feelings. And, you know, if your mama is sitting out in the audience, apologize to her first if you have to. But if you carry all that around with you, it's going to end up being unhealthy.
Right, most definitely. What poem gave you what life experience gave you the most stuff to write about?
A lot of things with my father, because like I said, my dad was a really, you know, closed up type of guy, but you know, when it came to me, came to me and my sister, we had different standards than what he had for his son.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of that's going on in the black community too. Is just like, you know, you want your girl child to be independent and take care of it, but your God, you know, your son or whatnot, it's like, I'm going to coddle you and I'm going to make sure you're okay and I'm going to buy you a car and I'm going to do this and this that. But you know, the daughter got to go get a job, go get your own car, go da da da. So it's just like with him, it's just like, you know, growing up, I saw the unfairness of that. I'm like, well, how come, you know, my brother don't have to do this stuff, and how come you don't have this day? It's like, you know, you put him on this pedestal because that's your son. But, you know, my mama is just like, you know, you go to college and get this, and da-da-da-da. But, you know, if my brother doesn't do it, then, you know, you'll fund him or you'll take care of that or whatnot. Right. So it was a lot of that unfairness going on there that I wrote about. And it's just kind of like, you know, Dad, you know, look at me as the same way you look at your son.
but it's a possibility. It's a possibility that he looked at you like he's going to be on your back because he know you can do it. Right. He might be looking at the son like, oh, this motherfucker. Like some of my kids, it's like, some is like, I know you can do it. And some of them is like, you might can do it. And that's just reality. So he might be looking at you like, yo, I know for a fact I need to push her because she can be, what you are great. You know what I mean?
And so, like I said, once again, that tough love,
yeah.
You know, that's definitely motivating and making sure that you do it right. Because if you don't, here comes Daddy like, yeah, you know, you know, you don't want to hear Daddy's mouth pretty much. Yeah. I mean, my dad had a lot of strong opinions that he made everybody know about. And then he went to his room to go watch football, leave me alone.
What's something about poetry you love and hate?
I love the fact that poetry provides an outlet. I mean, now more than ever, we need an outlet because, you know, if you go out there and rob and steal and break down everything or whatever, you know, that's not a healthy outlet. And if you can pick up a pen and you can write it in a poem, you can tell it to the people and it changes their mind. Some people think that that's more powerful than throwing a brick through a window.
It is.
So yes, and it's just like, if you can be, you know, smart enough or intelligent enough to use your poetry for good, then that's what I love about poetry. What I hate about poetry is the egos in poetry. I mean, I hate the fact that a slam artist thinks you're better than an open mic artist. I hate the fact that, you know, even though we might have the same talent, you got a 30, somebody gave you a 30 in a poetry slam, so you think that you're better than me. It's just like, you know, I love the fact that I can have open mic shows where we can appreciate the art and leave it at that. It's like, hey, you know, your poem might be, you know, on this level and my poem is on that, but who's to say? It's like,
it's all perspective.
Right. It's like your interpretation and your interpretation is just like, you know, I hate the fact that there's so many cliques. You know, I've talked about this in a lot of interview that, like, you know, because there's poets going around right now that I won't say their names, but they've called my show a kiddie show. They said, oh yeah, you know, go to the Hodgepodge Coffee House, you can bring your kids and, you know, you better not cuss there and everything. They got, you know, pastors and ministers there and stuff, and they'd never been to the show. So it's just like, you've never even come and you're telling other people, you know, yeah, you go to Apache, that's where they, you know, you can say what you want to do, what you want to do. Go to LadyVee show, you got to, you know, be restricted and everything. I'm like, that's not true. And you've never walked in the door to see that for yourself, so why are you pushing people away from my event?
Not just that, they let crazy ass Milk get on the stage. You know, go well. You know, go well. You can do whatever you want.
So, I mean, there are some gatekeepers in Atlanta that are just like, you know, hey, you know, you be over there. I'm not gonna share my resources with you or whatnot, you know. And I've called some people out on it or whatever, and we've smoothed those bridges over. But it's just like, don't go around and spit on a show or spit on an effort that you've never seen recently. You know, this particular person, they didn't come to the show for like 5, 6, 7 years, and someone comes to me talking like, you know what so-and-so said about your show? I'm like, I haven't seen him in 10 years. Right. So it makes me mad that, you know, some people use poetry for, you know, I'm better than you or I'm da-da-da-da. It's just like, don't use art that way, because once you start competing against other people or whatever, you can't grow in that kind of environment.
Right. I'm competing in poetry, but I'm competing to help poetry. Right. Like, I'm competing to help it grow.
Exactly.
But I'm not competing against you, or I'm not competing against nobody else particularly, but how can I put it? I use y'all as, like, people who was here before me. I look at them like, all right, this was here before me. What can I do to help add on to this shit?
Right.
You know what I mean?
What you've done at Chi Chi's show is awesome. It's like, you came to the Chocolate and did like the poetry ciphers and stuff like that. So, I mean, she didn't have that before.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you walk into an environment, it's like, okay, well, you don't have a DJ. Maybe Alan can be your DJ. Maybe, you don't have a visual artist. Let me help you with your flyers or whatever. Because you know that if you help them, it's going, like you said, it's going to help it grow.
That's what it's about, to me. But everybody don't see it like that.
Right.
Everybody don't see it like that. Everybody. And I always say, this is what I say, if somebody been saying stuff about me on the poetry scene, and this is what I say to people. I say, if you hating, you ain't working hard enough.
Right.
When you really working, you don't really got time to hate because you got tunnel vision on your own shit.
Exactly. If you're coming up into Hodgepodge Coffee House and passing your event flyers out on the table and leaving, you're not helping the culture.
No.
You're not even getting up on stage to say, hi, my name is, my poem is. You're just coming there to steal an audience, you're thinking. Mm-hmm. It's just like that type of thing, we really need to, because there's people in the Who Dat Nation in New Orleans, they're a very strong community. The people in North Carolina, like Blues and all them, they're strong. They help each other out or whatever. I think the poets in Atlanta, they're like, I'm gonna get mine, you get yours, and I don't, they're not really so bonded together. It's like you go to some other places, you go to even some places in New York, and they're like, yeah, we are the New York poets. We're here to, bring content, and they're like a big group of people, like, Bus Boys and Poets in Washington, D.C., they're like that. So I look at those types
Salute to E-Baby.
Yes. I mean, every time he gets on, he's like, my people in D.C., my people. And so it's just like, in Atlanta, we need to be a people saying we're representing Atlanta, not, here's Apache Poets, here's Java Monkey Poets, here's LadyVee's show or whatnot. It's just like, it's too much cliques going on, and we need to get together and be like these other cities that are helping each other grow.
It's funny. That's why that's part of why I started interviewing people. Like, I've interviewed Ryan from Java Monkey. I've interviewed you have your own show. I want to interview Ken Warner. He got a show. Mm-hmm. The thing is like, I go to different people's shows, but I got a family, job, hosting, features, working on my own book. But the main thing, I try to at least go to everybody's spot. Mm-hmm. Because the thing is like, when you put yourself in a clique and you stay in that clique, you basically closing doors on yourself.
Yes.
You basically saying that I'm not willing to work outside of my comfort zone.
Right.
And your comfort zone should be no comfort zone. Mm-hmm. That's what we're here for.
Yes, yeah, I've heard some poets say that, I'm going here and this is where my family is, and I'm just like, yeah, but, your family is here, but what about, other perspectives? What about your other, places that you could go to expand your art or whatever? If you're only doing poetry at this one place, your poetry is going to stay the same. Right. So do you really want that? I don't think so.
Oh, the other thing is, this is like when I like going places where there's nobody that don't know me.
Right. I've gone places where they've said, this is the first time I've ever heard spoken word poetry. Yes. I'm like, this is great because now you have a good example of what it should be.
Yes.
Not being arrogant, but...
No, it's not. Ain't nothing wrong with, basically repping poetry.
There you go.
You know what I mean? You see that shirt right there. What's your favorite poem from somebody else?
I mean, that's a very good question because there's so many.
Well, you can name 5 if you want.
Oh, okay.
I'll just say one poem. You can name 5.
Like Queen Sheba has the I Am the Woman poem. I mean, that's everybody's heard that one, and she's talking about the different variations. I'm the woman that did this, and I'm the woman that did it. It's just like, so many different variations of what being a woman really is. It's like you got to wear 15 different tiaras sometimes, and she really goes down the line and tells you, hey, this is what being a woman really is. So why are you, on my back so much when I'm carrying so much stuff? Right. Everyone loves the Teresa the Songbird, the Being Black poem that got her on the big global stage and everything. I mean, that's a tribute to, why are you feeling so bad about being black when being black is such a beautiful thing? We got so many people spitting in our face about being black, but she's up on stage telling you how beautiful black is. Yeah. So that's a good one.
That's definitely dope.
I love Poppy Picasso. I am a man. I am a man. It's just like, he gets so, and just his New York accent, and he's walking around the room, and he's just like, you can tell that he lives that poem. It's just like, man, he's walking around and he's telling people that this is my my experience. I am a man. Don't treat me as any lesser than the man that I am. So that's a good one. Number 3, and let me see. I mean, you have a poem.
No, outside of me. Don't bring me in.
Okay, you didn't say that. But
don't bring me in. Because I don't know what nobody be like, she only saying it because he's interviewing.
No.
Fuck his poem.
But I guess on the side note or whatever, you have, I'm not going to name it, but you have a poem with a very big twist at the end. And everybody's like waiting, they're like, oh my God, and they're like fall out their seat when they hear that twist at the end. So I'm not going to name that one.
Is it the one that, Mom?
Yes.
So I did that poem with an all-white audience. And she was like, 2 white girls looked at each other like, oh
exactly, because they don't expect that.
and then look, then the host get up there. I know who the host's name is. I'm not gonna say that. So she got up. She was like, "Well."
You don't know what to say then because you're so shocked. Like,
Here's the other thing, real quick. A side note, and then come back.
Okay.
The thing is, like, when you hosting a show, you can make a person look like they didn't do a good job. Like the audience, like they loved it, but when you get up there and say, "Well," it takes you down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm sorry. Finish saying what you were saying.
Yeah, it's kind of like that reaction. It's like, oh my God. But like I mentioned earlier, I mean, that Nikki Gray poem is awesome because, I mean, I really felt the fact that, you know, there's certain things that you have to hush about. That you can't say anything because then you know that person in your family is going to be like, why did you expose that about the family?
About your uncle touching you.
Right.
Or your auntie touching you.
Right.
That's a lot of times people don't talk about that. Your auntie touching you.
It's always the other side, too. But I mean, my husband in particular, not because he's just sitting there. I mean, he's coming out with a lot of poetry / hip hop that you know, I don't give him the props that he needs most of the time, and he thinks that, you know, I'm sitting up here not liking it or whatever. But he'll go up in the studio and write something like specifically to the times that we're living in. And that's what I pick up on. Is just like, you know, he has to be in that mind space, and he'll get on the internet and then see all the news or whatever. And like this morning I wake up and it's just like, you know, he's writing this poem about how we got to do something in America, and I was like, where did this even come from? Right. So it's just like, you know, I don't have a specific name of that poem from Allan Poe, but it's just like, you know,
I didn't know nothing about
Oh, that's dope. That's dope.
But when he's writing, it's kind of like I was saying about Langston Hughes, you know exactly what the time is. And that's what our job as poets is to tell people the time stamp of where we are, because once you pass away, once you're gone, those words are still going to be there for other generations to read. It's like colleges right now are asking us to tell them our quarantine story and what we're doing during this time or whatever, because this time is unlike any other time in history. You know, we're living in a time where, you know, we can't leave our house. They're telling us, you know, stay at home and wear a mask and stuff like, you know, this happens, people say every 20 years or whatever, but we need to archive this so when it's over with or whatever happens in the future, those kids beforehand will be like, okay, let me read the guidebook of how to get through something like this if it were to happen again.
Most definitely. What's your favorite spot to perform at? What's your favorite performance and favorite spot to perform at outside of your own events?
That is a good one. Let me see. I love performing at, I mean, even though you don't like Java Monkey, I changed perspectives at Java Monkey, I think. It's just like when it was, where it originated from, it's just like I would hear a lot of depression there. I would hear a lot of anger there. And I would be the one to get up and be like the funny poem. I'd be, up, you know, with the spiritual poem or something like that. And it was good for me to perform there because, like, afterwards you're like, well, man, you know, you really changed the vibe. You really did this. And I'm like, yeah, that was my purpose. So I went there with an agenda. I went there with a purpose of like, I know how it's going to be because it's like that all the time. So I want to be the one to like open your eyes to a brand new thing. It's like, even if, you know, the whole audience is like looking at their phone like, oh yeah, she's not depressing. She's not, you know, about to jump off a cliff or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's a good thing. Right. So I like performing there. And let's see, I would say any place that, I mean, for me, it's more like the host is important. They make you feel welcome and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like the environment itself, if you got free parking, I'm there. I mean, parking is a very, if I can find your place, there's some venues that I can't even find the front door.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, I'm driving around, I'm looking for a safe place to park and stuff like that. If it becomes too difficult to even go into your venue, I'm like, I'm going home. It must be a reason why I can't find it.
Right.
So, for me, it has to do a lot with the host of the show. If you're somebody that I know, or if I know I'm going to go in and feel welcome, I like it there. And the aesthetics of it all is just like, if I can't find the front door, then, if it's in a backwoods, or if in a back alley somewhere, I'm not going to your show. I don't feel safe.
Most definitely. You feel like I gotta be on guard. I can't.
Yes,
I gotta keep my pocketbook close. Keep my mace and taser pack.
I forgot to play. I was at Copper Blue on Martin Luther King with a show, and that was like an upstairs, downstairs type of building or whatever. It was right in the middle of downtown. And when our first show there was like homeless people walking up and down in front of the door, like asking people for money and this and that. It's just like, the women audience members, they were scared to even come near the door. And it's just like, I see that there's a need, that I don't feel, like that I'm not going to, put down homeless people or nothing like that. But it's just like, if you have your building and people are like trying to take money from you when you're walking into the poetry show and stuff, I'm just like, that's not a good environment you want to be in. It's just like you kind of want to be like, yeah, I wish I was someplace else because now I don't feel comfortable being here.
Most definitely. I definitely understand. The next thing I want to ask you is, what's your favorite food?
My favorite food has to be pasta.
Pasta?
Yes.
Any particular?
I mean, my husband used to bring home some pasta dishes with chicken in them and all types of stuff, and it's just like, for some reason, it's like pasta is like a comfort food for me. Right. It's kind of like, you want to say pizza, but pizza is sometimes too greasy. You got the cheese and everything like that. Pizza is a close second, but pasta you can make it up to be like, light, or you can make it up to be like, heavy sauce and everything. There's just a lot of variations when you can have, noodles and something else. So I like the creativity of pasta. You can put spinach in it, you can make it healthy or whatever, you can put like a whole bunch of cheese on it and make it, however you want. So it gives you a lot of options with pasta.
How many poems do you have locked in your head?
I don't have a specific number, but it's kind of like, when it comes to the point where you have to write it down or you can't sleep, then that's when you know that you're not an aspiring poet anymore. You're kind of getting there. It's like, when I go into the bathroom to get ready for bed or whatever, it's just like, I brush my teeth, I do my face, I do my hair or whatever, and I have a notepad in the bathroom. It's just like, before I go to bed or whatever, sometimes it's just like, Alan is sitting over there, you've been in the bathroom for 45 minutes, what are you doing? But it's just like, if you have these thoughts in your brain, you can't go to sleep with those thoughts on your mind, or you won't be able to sleep. You'll have nightmares about them. Right. So it's just like, even if it's not writing the poem before you go to bed, it's like jotting down the first couple of lines, or I'm going to type it in my phone so I don't forget it or whatever. That's kind of like, I was driving on the highway and I was just like, I'm thinking about this stuff, but I can't write it down because I'm driving. So it's like, you get home and you're like, okay, these are my thoughts that I was up and down I-20 doing. So yeah, I would say there's a lot, but you definitely can't let them go away. You can't let them be like, oh, I forgot that line or I forgot that verse or whatever. Just jot it down and come back to it later.
Yeah, when you forget a verse or
you hate that.
Oh,
that is like,
I feel sick.
And you try to bring it back, whatever. If you can't bring it back, just revise it. It's okay.
Because you always feel like that's the greatest poem or verse in the world.
Been.
Yeah.
And that's like when your computer breaks down. It's like, oh man, it's like all my poems are gone. It's like,
oh no.
Have it on the backup.
I keep my stuff in my notes because I write so much that if I lost it, it's lost.
It's gone.
Would you mind sharing how you learn how to remember poems? What's your process of learning poems in your head?
That's kind of a pressure thing too, because it's like I memorize poems for shows sometimes. It's like they